All right, ladies and gentlemen, I do really apologize for being very late. I had to reschedule just to make up the time. I was doing some extra research in the background so I could get this show right for you because it is some really significant news and it has to do with countries that I don't typically talk about very often, but I do know a lot about the region. I just had to get some facts straight about what the President of the United States did today at the Institute of Peace, which is a building that is now renamed after him. It's the Donald J. Trump building in Washington, D.C. So, President Trump invited two foreign leaders, actually, a few others as well, the president of Kenya, Angola, and also some other ones. But the two main leaders that he brought to that Institute of Peace was the president of Rwanda, Paul Kagame, and the crooked, milk dud looking president of Congo, Felix Tshisekedi, or whatever his name is. And the president signed and negotiated, after months of hard work, a lasting peace to implement the end of a hostile and brutal war that's been brewing in the last year and a half. It started in the Biden regime and Trump ended it. So that's the story of yet another war that started during Biden's regime, and Trump comes in and says no, no more. One of the criticisms of Trump early on was that he was a narcissist. That was the criticism from the mainstream media. They said, oh, he doesn't care about anyone but himself. And people on the right were even willing to concede some of that as long as Trump was focused on the right politics, the right policies. They said, okay, so what? He's a narcissist. At least he has these policies. At least he's a capitalist. At least he's a populist. At least he loves America and wants the economy to do well. At least he wants the military to be strong and America to be respected yet again. And I think that was the wrong conceit. It was the wrong thing to concede to, because Trump was never a narcissist. And he has proven that with the actions of the last 11 months. He has gone out of his way to resolve hostilities between nations, conflicts that have existed since those nations have existed, and he's doing it while also pushing major domestic policy as well. And this stream may seem hypocritical to some because I am one of the people that says I want Trump to focus on domestic policy. I want him to go all in on affordability and propelling American industry, which he's already doing. But I just want his focus 100% on that. And I don't want him focused on Russia, Ukraine as much. So this stream will come off as hypocritical, but I think that the older I get, the more pragmatic I become. And the more aware I become of really what the United States of America is. It's a superpower. And we have responsibilities beyond our borders. We do have responsibilities as the world's police to make sure that there's some sameness in enforcement of human rights and preventing wars and holding peace, guaranteeing peace. I don't want us having bases in every country on earth, but I do really understand why we do some things and why the US president isn't just the American president. He's the world's leader. They say the leader of the free world. It's really true. It used to be said as an exaggeration, but it's actually true. And yes, we do have adversaries that are up and coming, like China. China is currently at $20 trillion or maybe under that in their GDP, and they are an economic rival. But they don't rival us in any way when it comes to securing the world, keeping people safe. And I think we do need the American empire to guarantee peace for everybody, because there's no other empire in history that behaves like us. Yeah, we have our crimes, our transgressions against God, against human rights, war crimes. Yeah, we've done that throughout history. That's humanity's history, right? We live in a fallen world and we aren't a perfect nation, but we are the only superpower, the only imperial, well, we're not an imperial power like that, like the British Empire or the French Empire. or the Spanish Empire, we are a different kind of empire. We keep to ourselves, but we are comfortable with helping other people as well. And yeah, it's completely normal that we want the return, that focus of the American politician to return to the American people. That's America first. But we do actually want peace in the rest of the world as well. All right, let me stop yapping, stop blabbing on. The president today signed a historic peace agreement between Rwanda and Congo. And here's a 20-second snippet of what he said, and then I'll play a clip of the three leaders signing that peace agreement. Then I'm going to go into depth of what this conflict was all about and why it's important that we stepped in.
Today we commit to stopping decades of violence and bloodshed and to begin a new era of harmony and cooperation between the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Rwanda. Today,
yeah, I guess the Congolese president didn't get the memo right there. Look at him. Like, you know, the Rwandan president and the American president clearly got the script. Like, yeah, we're going to hold this up and let everyone see it. And then this dork over, he's actually very dumb. Like, that's the true analysis of this moment. He's actually a dumb president. And the conflict exists because of him. And Rwanda is one of the fastest developing countries in the world, which really isn't hard because, you know, you're coming from the bottom and when you come from the bottom and you go up, you know, any progress is going to be noticeable and appreciated by the world. But no, they are actually making huge strides as a country. But Congo, on the other hand, is devastating, right? It's devastating. It's a country that does not have any level of true leadership because you have a president like this one. And that's another angle of that. So, huge. And then the Rwandan president thanked Trump for brokering this peace deal because this would not have happened without Trump.
But of course, the biggest vote of thanks goes to President Donald Trump. No one was asking President Trump to take up this task. Our region is far from the headlines. But when the President saw the opportunity to contribute to peace, he immediately took it. This conflict has lasted for 30 years. We have seen countless mediations and efforts, but none has succeeded in resolving the underlying issues.
Yeah, so English is not his first language, so he's pretty slow in speaking, but yeah. So he thanked Trump for bringing a resolution to this conflict. Okay. So what is this peace deal? What does it entail? What does it include? Well, it's a permanent ceasefire, so they stop shooting at each other. And 25 million lives in eastern Congo are no longer going to be in constant turmoil. That's why I named it 25 million lives, because that's the number of people this war affected. You know, many people have already died and millions have been displaced already. So this ends all of that, right? So that is the most important part of the peace agreement. Both sides stop shooting. They also pledged to, well, let's not say pledge, because that makes it seem like they can fail to accomplish what they promised. They also say that they are going to disarm all the groups that they've been arming. Rwanda's been arming a group called M23, and Congo's been working with a group called the FDLR. These are groups with conflicting ideas, it's ethnic ideas, it's tribalism, it's everything you'd think in a war like this. So both sides, both countries pledge to disarm whoever they're arming right now. And then the third part, which is what's important to America, apart from the peace, because yes, the peace is important, but what's in it for us? We still need a little bit of that moolah. Well, we gain access to the supply chains that exist in critical minerals, rare earths in Congo and Rwanda. We already import a lot of tungsten from Rwanda, so it's not new. Rwanda is a pretty developed country in terms of their industry. It's growing, they're industrializing, so we work with them. But with Congo, they're more aligned with the Chinese, so this deal brings the US and Congo together economically, and it gives American companies access to extract and value add some of the minerals that the world is going to need. And it combats China, it isolates them diplomatically and also economically. So with a partnership like this, the United States is insulating ourselves from the influence of the Chinese over our supply chains. And China's pissed. They're going to be very angry. So that's the economic angle. We are gaining something from this. Now, what is this conflict? Because it's something a lot of people don't really hear about. The mainstream media doesn't bother to look into it. So the conflict goes something like this. Rwanda was colonized by Belgium. The same was true for Congo. So both countries were colonized by Belgium. And of course, the Belgish, or however you call Belgium people, they did what they did. They committed all kinds of atrocities. And, it's not like British colonization, because when the Brits colonized areas, they brought British common law, they brought infrastructure. Nigeria, when it was controlled by the British, probably had the same level of infrastructure it does now. And they've been independent, quote unquote, for almost 70 years. So it wasn't like British colonization, right? The British actually brought value to the areas they colonized. And of course, they, committed some atrocities, and it was bad. But generally speaking, the British common law system and the legal framework and the infrastructure they brought to different areas was appreciated by the locals. The French and the Belgish didn't really do the same. They have a different system. The French brought a different kind of law system, a different rule system. They brought tougher interactions. They brought, all kinds of different things to the countries they colonized. That's why formerly colonized British countries succeed and the French ones not so much. The British system and the British Empire, in my opinion, was superior. Belgium was closer to France in how they behaved with their colonies. So what Belgium did when they landed in Rwanda is they realized that they had a country. Well, it wasn't really a country at that point. It was later formed to be Rwanda. But they had a colony with two distinct ethnic groups. Now, to the naked eye, to you and I, we don't really see the difference. If you see a Congolese person that says they're Hutu and a Tutsi, to us, they look the same. But what Belgium realized was the Tutsis were a minority, but they were more aristocratic. So they behaved as rulers, they were smaller in numbers, so they, were more educated. They thought about the society a little bit more like the Belgium did, the Belgish. Someone tell me, am I saying this right? Belgish? Really? They got to change that country's name, because Belgians, that doesn't sound right either. But so they aligned themselves with the Tutsis, and what they did was they propped up the Tutsis. Now the Hutus were the majority, and the Belgish realized that, you know what? They're going to be our farmers, because they were herders, they were farmers, so they did the peasant jobs of whatever the society was before they came in. So by aligning with the Tutsis, they had a smaller number of people to work with. Because if you align with the majority, you have to please all these different people, a lot more people. Whereas if you go with a minority that has a lot more power, you're going to get a lot more done faster. You have less people to convince, and it's just easier to govern that way if you're working from thousands of miles away in Europe and they're in Africa in a colony, and you don't have that many men on the ground. So they used the Hutus as the labor and the Tutsis as the controllers of the labor. So that's what happened. And then let's just fast forward, colonialism ends, and now you have this interesting relationship where the minority Tutsis are in control of Rwanda's government because of their roles in the previously colonized society. So the Hutus, because they are the majority, started just kicking the Tutsis out of power and taking positions for themselves. But the division wasn't just, oh, you're farmers and peasants and you're aristocrats and rulers of society. They made the division more ethnic, right? They said, look, actually, they are the devil. The other side are the devil, and that was to keep the division going. But after colonization, that division became even more clear. And propaganda started getting spread by Hutu leaders that said, look, our Tutsi brothers who ruled over us, they're the devil, they're the enemy. We need to do something about them. Genocide, right? Like, we need to kill them all. That was the message back then. A disgusting message, but you'd get radio communications of what they were planning. And the Rwandan Civil War kicks off, the Hutu president, his plane gets shot down, and then this message that had been brewing up to exterminate the cockroaches and get rid of the rats, that was the kind of message that was going out to the Hutu majority. That message pumped to the max, and in a period of 2 months in 1994, almost 1 million Tutsis were wiped off the face of the earth. It was one of the bloodiest, genocides in the history of the world. So you had Hutus killing the Tutsis, the minority. And so a lot of bloodshed. Where was the world? Well, it happened so fast. No one really could predict how quickly that whole thing was brewing. It's also in an obscure part of the world, so it wasn't something massive. But what happened was Paul Kagame, the guy we just heard from, and that's why I have huge respect for him, because he was out in Uganda, I believe, working with the Rwanda Patriotic Forces, or Patriotic Defense Forces, whatever that was. And it was like a militia. And he's a Tutsi, so he was fighting for his people. So, he got donations from the Rwandese diaspora across the world. He got backing from the United States and, other groups. And he armed his militia, and they went in after this catastrophic event, and they took power. They fought and beat the Hutu government, and Kagame became the de facto leader of the country. But what happened was the Hutu militias that committed this atrocity, because this is 1994, a lot of these people are still alive, they fled to Eastern Congo, because that was where they still had a huge majority of the Hutus were in Congo. Same ethnic group. So they fled there to Congo. You can start to see how this works. And they fled to other areas as well, but mainly to Eastern Congo. Man, oh, this is crazy. I don't know how I'm remembering this. It's bizarre to me that this is sticking in my head, because I did research about this last year before the election, or right after Trump won, because the Congolese president said he would give up or give Trump a portion of his minerals if Trump would align with them in their fight against Rwanda. And I looked into this and I was like, this is crazy history. But, I already knew about the Rwandan genocide before that, so it was just news to me. But anyways, so all these people, these militias fled, and militias do what they do. They reform and reorganize, and they created different militias in Congo, still opposed to the Tutsis in Rwanda. But Rwanda, under Paul Kagame, said, we're not going to be the country that's only known for the atrocity that went on here. We want to be a country that develops and unites. So Kagame went ahead and banned ethnic division, essentially saying no one gets labeled by what tribe they are, which that's smart policy because they don't look that different from each other, right? Like, I don't see a difference when I see, if you put two people, I just see them as like, oh, you're from the same country, you're the same people. But to them, they see each other as different. So he said, no, we're not going to take revenge. We already kicked out the militias. We're just going to reintegrate everybody into this society. And he took after Lee Kuan Yew, the dictator of Singapore, who built Singapore to be richer than its former colonizer, Great Britain. Of course, Singapore is a city-state, so it's not like, Britain is an empire. It's a country with 56 million people, so it's a kingdom, right? But Singapore's still richer than Great Britain. Singapore became a great nation because of Lee Kuan Yew's reforms, his capitalist policies, his push to liberalize the economy, and all these things. So Kagame said, we're going to do the same thing in Rwanda. Rwanda has something of a disadvantage when it comes to Singapore. They are landlocked, so they're not free to trade and do all the other things. But he adopted the same business framework, and Rwanda became very successful, and they're an emerging economy for that reason. And that's why they're able to sign deals with the United States that aren't foreign aid deals, but trade deals. So it's a respectable thing that they've done. But like all conflicts, there was a group in the Congo, like I said, the FDLR, which was formed of these ex-Hutu militias that did what they did in Rwanda. They started forming and coming up and building troops, and the Congolese government started aligning with them, bringing them essentially into the Congolese military, because otherwise that group would have taken over Congo and it would have been a bloody. So Congo started aligning themselves with the group that committed those atrocities. So Rwanda sees that as a security issue, because it's like, hey, that group made up of people that committed those things in our country, that's a danger to us. So they saw that as a security issue. So Rwanda started backing a different group called M23, a group that, and Rwanda's military is far more professional than Congo's, hence why Rwanda, a country of 20 million people, is beating a country with 100 million. Congo has a huge population, yet a tiny country is devastating them in combat. And that country isn't even fighting directly. Congo's fighting directly. Rwanda's just backing, it's like the US backing a guerrilla group to fight on our behalf, and we're beating a country with a vastly higher population than us. It's like us beating China. Bad analogy, but us beating China, India's better because India is less powerful than China. Us beating India by backing a Pakistani militia, it's like what? Like, not even the Pakistani army, but a Pakistani militia. That's kind of how that goes. So they were getting devastated in combat. Congo, of course. And this M23 group was literally taking parts of Congo. And the Congolese people were saying, oh my gosh, Rwanda's stealing our minerals. Because, I assume, world leftists think that anytime there's a conflict between a powerful nation or a country that's stronger and a country that's weaker, it's about exploitation. I guess Marxism is about that. It's about class struggle, and you have to convince people that every conflict is tied to exploitation, minerals, and this nonsense. As if Rwanda doesn't have any natural resources in their own ground. So Rwanda starts funding the M23 and they start taking cities in eastern Congo. They take Goma, which is a huge city. They take other regions, and this conflict is brewing. And this is during the Biden administration. Then Trump comes into power, and he says this has to stop. And the U.S. starts sanctioning officials in both Rwanda and Congo who are known to be collaborating with these various militias, these groups. Rubio starts using his bullhorn, saying this is not good for the United States, it's not good for the world. And the Congolese president says, if the U.S. aligns with us, takes our side in this conflict and helps us defeat Rwanda, we'll give Trump access to our minerals. And Congo has, I think, the largest lithium reserves in the world. And lithium is going to power the new global industrial digital age. So that's a very appealing offer to the Trump administration, because we are looking to diversify our supply chain from being dominated by China to having some independence, to doing mining in the United States, but also partnering with partners around the world like Australia, like Brazil, less so Brazil, like Argentina, like essentially Malaysia, those countries like South Korea, Japan, like countries that, and Taiwan, of course, countries and areas around the world that have what we're looking for. We have it at home, but we'd like to have like an extra bit of insulation between us and China. We want our own supply chain domestically, but if all else fails here and we can't get that running in time, we still need partners around the world. And if we do eventually get our supply chain running, we still want to have that extra security buffer, because we don't want China to put rare earth mineral control bans on us, and our tech industry can't move. We can't make anything because we need their components. So Trump understands that it's an interesting idea from Congo, but he is somebody that doesn't like bloodshed. So he says, why don't we just stop the war? Well, we're not going to align with any of you. We just need the war stopped. So a few months ago, after much work with Marco Rubio, Mossad Bullis, Trump's, what do you call, because I know what a son-in-law is, right? The guy that marries your daughter, but what do you call the father of your son-in-law? Mossad Bullis is Michael, I think that's his name, Michael Bullis's father. He is Lebanese African. I don't know how, but he was, I think, born in Africa somewhere. But he's Lebanese, and I don't know how that whole thing occurred. But Michael Bullis married Tiffany Trump. So so Trump brought him in to be like the special envoy to African affairs. So he's like a U.S. diplomat. He starts saying, Mr. President, let's focus on this issue. And him and Marco Rubio start negotiating with both sides. And a few months ago, they came to a general consensus. I need to find that name. Someone in the chat probably mentioned it. I need to know. Father-in-law? No. No. Your father-in-law is Trump to Michael Bullis. Like, if I married a woman, well, why do I say if? Like, I would marry a man. No, if I got married, my wife's father would be my father-in-law. But what would my dad call the same man? That's what I'm saying. Sons of thieves, the Dutch. What are you guys even saying? All right, whatever. You guys aren't helping. You're making this hard. Whatever they are, okay. They're business partners. Let's call them that. They're business partners in marriage. Let's call it that, okay. Let's call it that. But they negotiate, and a few months ago they sign the first phase, a disarmament. Both sides say we're going to slow down, and there's a temporary ceasefire. If one side violates the ceasefire, it all goes to crap. And that's kind of been holding up, and, there's still been fighting, but, that's kind of how these things go. They secretly fight, but, for the most part, they hold up the agreement. And then today, what the president did was essentially say, look, this conflict has been going on for a long time. Congo has been aligning itself with FDLR. Rwanda has been backing M23. Millions of lives have been affected. Let's end this. And then there's an economic integration. So both sides have to be economically entangled. And this is one of the geniuses of Donald Trump. He understands that, and I used to think he only wanted wars to end because he was a businessman. And to me, that was a great way of looking at it. But I think he actually does care about human life. He is a president that has a regard for people. But he still is a businessman. He thinks that if people do business together, they are less likely to fight each other because we both lose. And so Trump is forcing these two countries and the entire East African region to start to do business, to trade, to industrialize. This is what the agreement is about, and that's how you really do peace. You don't just say, all right, sign a deal, you're not going to fight. If you do, we're going to fight both of you. It's like, you're a father, your two kids are fighting, you tell them, stop fighting, and then they start fighting again. You're going to beat both of them up, but that's not what Trump is doing. Trump is saying, stop fighting, and here's some money you start trading with. Well, he's not giving them any money, but, you get the point. You start trading with each other, and you're not going to... Oh, it's Belgians. Okay, you guys correct me an hour after I make the mistake. This is the problem, all right? What kind of relationship is this? I go on and I do the show, and then you come in an hour later and then correct me? This is crazy. It's like when my mic was muted for like a minute it was like 5 minutes on the show with Jake Lang. No one said anything. And then, I make a great point. I guess you guys were probably like, oh, whew, we don't have to hear that anymore. But no, I made a great point, and then I read comments, you're muted. Like, yeah, you could have told me that like 5 minutes ago. But anyways, this is a toxic relationship. It's not me, it's actually you this time, okay? It's you. I'm not mad, I'm actually just disappointed in what you guys are capable of doing. I was asking, is it Belgish or Belgians? And you said nothing. And you made me look dumb. Now the left is going to watch this and they're going to go, told you so. These black conservatives. I'm not a black conservative. I'm a black nationalist Christian. Like I'm beyond black conservative. I'm on to the next. Okay, America only, baby. That's where I'm at. But anyways, it's funny we're talking about global politics and I'm saying America only. Look, we're an empire. We're a superpower. We have to do superpower things every now and then, okay? We have to end the war in Congo and Rwanda because it builds credibility. Okay, so the war ends. Thank God. Lives have been saved. The displacements can end. People can return home. An economic revival will take place. The U.S. companies will have access to minerals, and that's going to benefit the people there. It seemed like what Marco Rubio and some others mentioned is there's going to be value adding, which is what Paul Kagame was talking about. So they're going to be refining, and they're not just going to be exporting raw material and then to China. And here's kind of the misconception. There's a general mistrust among global people, because I was looking into a recent election that took place, I believe, in Ecuador. And the current president of Ecuador, Daniel Noboa, is aligned with the United States, and he put forth a referendum for the nation to vote on to allow U.S. bases to return and also to allow the United States to cooperate with Ecuadorian authorities to combat cartel activity and stop the flow of narcotics into the United States. Well, the people voted against that referendum. That was last month. And it was a devastating piece of news to the Ecuadorian administration because they're looking at it like we really needed the U.S. here to help us. We don't have the ability to do this ourselves. But the reason the people voted against that was because they have a general distrust of the American empire. They think we're going to come in and exploit them. And it's like, that's an unfounded thing. Like it's, you know how Democrats said there's no evidence to support that claim when you said anything about the 2020 election? That's kind of how there's no evidence to support the claim that every time the United States gets involved in any country, that country falls apart. How would you explain South Korea? That was a country that we got involved in, helped them fight the Koreans or North Koreans and prevent the spread of communism to South Korea, to Seoul, and it's now one of the most successful countries in the world. It's a rich country that makes cars that we import. We trade with them. We literally propped up a country out of nowhere. There was not going to be a South Korea, and the South Koreans love our presence. They celebrate when our military men and women, men. All right, fine. There's women there too. When our military shows up, they celebrate because American intervention did good for them. The Japanese is the same thing. You know, we intervened in a different way. We nuked two of their cities, Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Is it Nagasaki? I forget sometimes about, everyone knows Hiroshima. We nuked them. And they still love us. The Japanese love America. In fact, I think we are the most popular country in Japan, as opposed to in terms of the countries they view favorably. Like, we have a high favorability in Japan. In Germany, we intervened, helped them defeat Hitler, and Germany is now a different country. A country that, well, they could do with a little bit more right-wingness. It's like Hitler happened, and they think anything associated with nationalism is like National Socialist. It's not the same thing. In the rest of Europe, we stopped them, or we helped them stop fighting each other. We made sure that they weren't, constantly at each other's necks. The UK and France used to go to war every year, it felt like, in the 1700s and 1800s. But now they're allies because of U.S. intervention. We help them hedge against any other influences. Without us, London would be speaking they'd be speaking Dutch. Deutsch sprechen Deutsch, like they'd be sprechen that German. That's what they'd be doing. The Irish wouldn't be, flirting with their own language, and the Scottish and Wales people, they wouldn't be flirting with. They'd be speaking some German. Okay? There wouldn't be Romaniac or Romance languages. You would be speaking. That's what you'd be speaking without U.S. intervention. So, the evidence is clear. Not every time the U.S. has intervened in a country has that country turned out to be bad. We created Panama. We got Panama to gain its independence from Colombia. Panama is now a great country. Panama City is a great city in Panama. We gave them the Panama Canal for free, by the way. We should take it back. But we gave that to them. And that allows a lot of trade. And then they abused it by allowing the Chinese in to start charging American ships. And the U.S. president said, no, you can't do that. We built this and gave it to you. We want it back. And then they're all complaining. But it's like, how can you say anytime the U.S. is involved in anything with any foreign country that it's bad for that foreign country? How can the left make that claim every time when it's not true? It's false. The Marshall Plan was us giving Europe billions of dollars after World War II to help them rebuild. I think in today's dollars, it was like $200 billion, or probably far more. We gave that kind of money to Europe to build their infrastructure, to build their industries back up so they can start trading, and their economies were artificially popped up by the United States. And people are saying, oh, whenever the U.S. intervenes, they exploit. No, that's not true. And you can't say, oh, we only do it with European nations, because we do it with Asian nations. What people don't realize is there are just different U.S. administrations that have different objectives. Someone like Trump just wants everyone to make money. Trump is a very money-centered. He says, to bring America together, let's make money. Like, that's Trump's philosophy. He thinks that if we do business with countries like Ukraine, then we will actually have a real reason to back Ukraine in a conflict. He says if we do business with China, and by China opening their markets to American products, we're not going to be at each other's necks. He says if we do business with Russia after this war ends, we're not going to fight Russia. Like, he thinks if people are trading and doing business together and making money, they're not going to fight. And that's what Trump says. And I think it's true. It's just human nature. If we're both winning together, why fight each other? That's the fundamental thing about Donald Trump. So whenever the United States gets involved in anything, it's not always exploitation. That could have been the case with the Clinton administration, when Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, because I think even her husband did a pretty decent job as president, balancing the national deficit, and that was the last time we had a balanced budget. And then that other time with Newt Gingrich as Speaker of the House. So we don't always do bad things when we get involved in countries. It's like people complain when Trump wants Venezuela to be aligned to America. Why is that a bad thing? Why can't we impose a certain worldview on the Western Hemisphere? We are the superpower. We're like every other country's biggest trading partner in this hemisphere. So it kind of matters what they do around us, right? So this is a big deal. It brings peace to a much needed area. It brings American companies to do business there, and it helps the local people because they're going to have jobs, of course. And people think, and this is kind of the problem with the world, is whenever mining is involved, when they think of mining in Africa, and they probably correctly think this way, they think of children going into mines doing that blood mining, that physical hand mining. But we're in the 21st century, 2025, baby, artificial intelligence, robots, heavy machinery. Mining is done with technology now. It's not men in shafts going under the earth digging for things. I mean, that still happens, but the majority of mining is very professional. It's technological. It's advanced. So the world is benefited by the exploitation, the extracting of the resources on Earth. Why would God put oil on Earth if he didn't want humanity to eventually use it? Yeah, so this is not just a deal for peace. It's an important deal for peace, of course, but it's a deal that brings the United States closer to dominating the mineral industry. China currently controls and dominates, I think, 80%, something like that, of the mining activities in Congo. The United States doesn't have a footprint in Africa when it comes to mining like that. But you'd think that we do with how the left will say, oh, the U.S. is after minerals. You guys don't realize how much I hate that argument, because it's just wrong. It's a wrong argument. It's incorrect. So the U.S. president has done a great job here. President Trump deserves great credit. The left won't give him that credit, and every president gets to be judged by, thankfully, actually, judged by posterity. Future generations will look back and say, what did the American president in 2025 do when it mattered? Trump has solved a lot of wars, and you can see it. He is passionate about solving the Russia-Ukraine war. There was a conflict recently where Putin called Trump and said, hey, I support you in stopping this conflict. And Trump was like, why don't you support me in stopping your like he was something along those lines, where he was like, well, ironic, because you're also in a conflict I want to end. But it's like, that is Trump's, his feeling is, let's stop the hostilities. Let's just not do that, right? Trump is the only president that has talked about denuclearization. You would think the guy they touted to be the bull in the china shop who was going to disrupt the world and start these wars, you'd think he'd be like, let's make more nuclear weapons. He's talking about denuclearization. Then they go, but he's testing nuclear weapons. Yeah, but that's because he's doing it as a hedge. He's kind of just letting Russia and China know, if you guys want to test your nukes, we're going to test our nukes. So, like that, he literally only did that because the other nuclear powers tried to do the same. But he's talking about denuclearization because they're destructive. That is how it works. That is how President Trump is. So, but yeah, when that Russia-Ukraine war ends, it will be an economic win for the country because Russia will get to selling their oil back to a lot of countries, and that's going to drop the price of oil because demand is high, but supply isn't where it needs to be. And look, we have $2 gas here in Colorado. Some of you can't relate, you Californians with your $10 per gallon. I'm sorry. Okay, it's probably going to be $20 by the time Newsom's done absolutely screwing you over with 50 million carbon taxes and all the nonsense he does at the pumps. But we'll like to see gas cheaper than $2, right? Everyone would like that. The whole world would benefit from that. So when that Russia-Ukraine war ends, it'll be credited to Trump. And I do feel bad for Trump because he didn't start that war, in a literal way. Like, you can argue he shouldn't have been given Patriot systems to Ukraine in the Donbass war in his first term. You can argue that, but I don't think Putin was ever going to go in because of that. He was never going to go in. He was respectful to Washington at that point. But after the Afghanistan disaster, Putin saw that the American empire was weak and he took his chance, and he thought it would probably end fast. Ukraine would capitulate, but Boris Johnson was sent by Joe Biden and NATO to go tell Zelensky, keep the war going. The United States is going to fund it forever. And Zelensky did that. Zelensky went from someone who was about to fold to someone who pretended to be this warlord who was going to bring victory to Ukraine. And everyone knew the entire time it wasn't going to be the case. But it's Donald Trump who now has to suffer and call Putin 50 times a day and hear Russian and hear translators because of Europe and the United States under the previous regimes. So when that war ends, it's going to be a huge win. It's going to be a big win. And I think it's going to end in the next few months. All right. Does anyone else think George is the auto pen hiding out here on YouTube? I see a strong resemblance. Oh man, they're calling me the auto pen. Oh gosh, that's a new one. Hey, that would have meant I ran the country for 4 years, right? Because we didn't have a real president. We had a hijacker. We had the President Auto Pen making all the decisions. What a fantastic show full of important information. Most of us knew nothing about the regional wars, says Gigi. God bless them. Yeah, God bless anyone that likes peace. Belgian, oh gosh. Belgianites, oh gosh. You're roasting me. This is, wow. After you couldn't correct me, you roasted me. Wow. I asked, I begged for your correction, and you wouldn't discipline my tongue when I required it. It was kind of interesting what else happened in that, not Oval Office, but at the Institute of Peace, the building now named Donald J. Trump, because you had the Kenyan president, these other guys just looking at Trump like for his approval. Like they were like, Mr. President, Your Excellency. I've never heard Trump get called Your Excellency. That's something John Adams would be proud of, a U.S. president getting called Your Excellency, Your Majesty the President, His Majesty the... John Adams, he wanted the president to feel like nobility, so he was literally coming up with these names the president should get called, and Washington was like, you know what, just call me Mr. President, that's all. And that's why we call the president Mr. President. And the president isn't this, noble figure. He's not nobility, but the African leaders really took it upon themselves to call Trump His Excellency, President Trump. Like, man, Excellency, I'd feel like a dictator too if I was getting called His Excellency every day. But the way they were kind of treating Trump, and it was like he was a paternal figure, right? Because a lot of these African presidents, they don't care about their constituents back at home. We have a president, thankfully, in the United States who puts America first and cares what we think. You know, when we cook Trump about H-1Bs, when he's like, we need H-1Bs, we cook them, and then he comes out and he's like, my base isn't going to like, yeah, he knows, right? We're cooking him. So he knows he works for us. But like, you know, some of these other guys, his counterparts from the African continent, their real constituents are the foreign aid masters, not the people that voted them in. So they view Trump as the ultimate big don, like they got to get his approval. And if they don't get his approval, they're going to have daddy problems. You know, when people say, oh, girl has daddy issues, what they mean is she grew up without a father that approved, gave her that affirmation, that guidance, gave her that, you know, like self-esteem, right? Like, because that's how you build your self-esteem. It's not just you saying something, it's other people recognizing something about you that's unique, particularly your father or mother, right? You need that approval. And if you don't have that, especially from your paternal figure, you're going to just accept anything. You're not going to know what kind of man to look for when it's time to get married, especially as a woman. So you need the approval of your father. And the African presidents didn't want to have daddy issues because they need Donald Trump's approval. And that was an interesting dynamic, the way they were just kind of like, oh, thank you, thank you. It's like getting his approval, like, please say my name. It's like, come on, you know? Come on. Dads are key. Yes. And mothers too, you know. Mothers protect children from the outside world, and fathers prepare them for the outside war. You know, mothers nurse children after a long day of combat, and fathers prepare them for the imminent war to crush the opposing empire, to invade the village and take their belongings by force and by fire. A little aggressive, but you know, you get the point. You get the point. You know, moments like this, moments like today, do make me proud of the vote I went and cast on November 3rd last year. Yeah, it makes me, well, November, was it, what November date was it? November 5th? I kind of forgot, to be honest. Yeah, look, we won, right? If it got rigged, I would be talking about it 24/7. You'd never hear the end of it from me. But, you know, we won, so I kind of forgot which November it was. Lou Valentino says, get off the live stream, we need to talk. Lou, look, are you hungry today, Lou? Do I look like your mother? I gotta feed you? Ah, Lou and I strategize over videos that we're gonna make. We're a great team. We work together. I see him as a colleague, and you know, we're both black, so we're stealing from each other. He'll make a video, I'll make the same video, you know, and I'll use the same title he uses, because look, you know, he uses the same title I use. That's Negrotivities. That's what we do, man. Negro activities. November 5th, yes, it was your birthday. Imagine if Kamala Harris became a resident of the United States. If the cackling dragon won, and yeah, on your birthday, man, that's it's like a punishment from God, huh? Yeah, Lou says call him. Yeah, I'll call him after we end this, and we are wrapping this down. Let me read some comments here. Georgia Lonely. Susan says, your face and who you support tells me so. I'm lonely. I look lonely to you? Nah, I'm with my people right now. That's a radical left lunatic. That's what we have in the comments, people. Cackles would be a nightmare. Yeah, imagine that on your birthday. That's unbelievably sad. Lou wants a raid when he starts a stream. Lou, if we were in a different time, man. No, Lou doesn't stream. He's a video maker now. You know, he's a full-blown. I try to stream, you know, show up unfiltered, raw. I just show up. Lou doesn't want to do that. He's trying to do the professional thing. Lou thinks Lou drinks matcha. That's the kind of guy he is. You know, he drinks matcha. I'm over here drinking full black coffee, and he's drinking matcha. The internet are your people. Yes. In-laws. Okay, so Trump and Mossad Bolis are just in-laws? Nah, but in-law, something precedes in-law, right? Father-in-law, son-in-law, daughter-in-law, niece-in-law, like uncle-in-law, auntie-in-law. Yeah? No? Could be wrong. Kool-Aid? Yeah, I should probably just stock up on some Kool-Aid and watermelon, because those things are necessary. But anyways, let's pray and then I'll leave. Lord, thank you so much for today and the peace that the U.S. president achieved. I pray you continue to give him wisdom and also give wisdom to all the leaders involved in this peace so that they continue their efforts and actually maintain this peace. Your word makes it clear that blessed are the peacemakers. Lord, bless all the peacemakers, motivate them, give them that divine spirit of understanding, discernment, to understand how to resolve conflicts without resulting to the tools of the enemy, which is to kill. Thank you very much, God. We bless you. We honor you. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, only law I believe is in the law of the land. Well, there's other laws that, but you know, I get what you mean. I get what you mean. The trolls always have to run their stupidity. Look, I don't even consider them trolls. I consider them future people that, oh, yes. The U.S. Appeals Court just sided with Trump, ruling that the activist judge who forced him to pull the National Guard out of D.C. was wrong. Oh, shock. Trolls give you views. Look, I'll take it. You know, I'm all about the grift, babe. You know me. So it's really important to love the trolls and to pray for the trolls that they keep coming back. You know, but yeah, no, the trolls are just people we need to convert. They'll eventually become radical right-wing lunatics like myself. Oh, by the way, the Senate GOP just filed to confirm 97 Trump nominees all at once. Okay, that's pretty good. That is pretty good. That is pretty good. Oh, man. They're usually just they'd never do that. Okay, all right. Everybody, we don't want to hit an hour. You guys know me. After an hour, I start getting cranky, so I'll get out of here before I start hating all of you. All right, I'll see you in the 50 videos we upload today. We are 1 like away from 1770. Dang it! Who just liked 3 times? We could have been at 1776 likes, and now we're stuck with 1778. Somebody unlike right now and get us to that goal. Never mind. Don't unlike, actually. All right, goodbye. Oh, people are watching the show on delay. True.